everyone. We have been in this series called I Am Second. How many have been just incredibly encouraged by the stories coming out of our church during this series? Just totally amazing. I don't know if you've had a chance to either go on Facebook or Twitter, but we have people in our church that are just posting their stories on our Facebook page. They're going to My Story at Elim Gospel, sending out an email. Sometimes some are doing video, some are just writing them in. They are also incredibly encouraging. I just invite you to check that out when you get a chance. This morning, we're going to be hearing from a special speaker. We're very excited about that. Last week, Pastor Josh talked about no longer orphaned. It was a great message. This week, we're going to be hearing about no longer damaged goods. That God looked at us and said, there's something that's worth saving. Our special speaker today is actually a friend of mine. I met him through his son. And this is kind of how this happened. I was working at Pizza Hut with his son, and it was late at night. We were closing out the restaurant. And so I just decided I was going to mess with him. And I was like, hey, you know what? My dad can beat up your dad. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah. It's like, my dad was 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a drill sergeant, and he could kill you in a blink of an eye. And he's like, oh, well, my dad was a Green Beret. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he can kill your dad. I was like, I'm not going to go there. So that was my first introduction to Gary Beikirch. Gary Beikirch, Sergeant Gary Beikirch of the 5th Special Forces Group, has received the highest honor our military and country can give, the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor is the United States of America's highest military honor, awarded for personal acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. This medal is awarded by the President of the United States in the name of the U.S. Congress to U.S. military personnel only. This morning, you're going to hear how Gary Beikirch went beyond the call of duty in a battle in the Vietnam War. During that battle, Sergeant Beikirch was severely injured and still moved through enemy fire to bring medical aid to the fallen soldiers. He refused treatment and continued his search for other casualties until he eventually collapsed. This devotion qualified him to receive the U.S. military's Medal of Honor. Gary, who was born in Rochester, New York, now resides in Greece, where he invested into the lives of middle school students for 33 years as a guidance counselor. Recently retired, he looks forward to spending more time working on his other great passion, serving the military and veteran community, as he continues to share this message of living a life of significance. Would you stand to your feet as we welcome Gary Beikirch?
Yep, it's on. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be able to be here, especially while you're doing a series about I Am Second, and especially today with that we are no longer damaged goods. Although there are mornings when I wake up and I still feel pretty damaged in my heart, in my soul, and my spirit. I know that above all else, I'm a new creation in Christ. In preparation for coming here this morning, because I had talked with Doug and he said this, you are involved with this I Am Second series, I started thinking about my own story, and I started thinking about I Am Second. Actually, I would place myself pretty much even lower down the ladder when it comes to Christ. But I started doing some reading, and I came across this poem, an Old English poem, because I remembered this quote. There was a quote that stuck with me for something. I think because it was a quote from Winston Churchill. But he said, I am the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. And actually, that quote comes from a poem called Invictus, which was written by, it's an Old English poem. And Invictus actually means unconquered. And those last 2 lines of that poem, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And then when I found out this morning, as a matter of fact, that Invictus means unconquered, I got thinking about, well, that makes sense then why that guy, his name was Henley, why he thought that he was the master of his fate and the captain of his soul, because he went through life unconquered. And as you read the poem, it's just a real great testament about the strength of the human spirit, about what the human will can accomplish. But that goes counter to what Christ teaches, and that goes counter to what my own experience had been in life. I want to share a story with you about where my human will and my human spirit and my living in myself failed me. My wife and I, Lala, can you stand? It's a blessing because I've been doing a lot of traveling, and this is really the first time in quite a while that she's been able to be with me. So I really rely on her, too, because she helps me stay on track, and she'll throw things at me if I go down too many bunny trails or, But we were going down to a place called Altoona, Pennsylvania. Now, I never even knew there was an Altoona, PA, and this was before GPS, but we did have MapQuest then. So I remember typing in Altoona, PA, and I got the directions to make it to Altoona. We got ready to leave and got in the car, and we started driving. And it wasn't too long before Lolly noticed that I was just really focused on driving and hadn't been paying attention or looking at the directions. And she said, "Something wrong? You don't have them, do you?" And I said, "No. I left them on the table." I said, "But no problem, Lal. I looked at them. I got the vision. I got it here and I got it here. Trust me, I don't need directions. I can get us there." Somehow, though, she wasn't buying into my vision, or my explanation didn't totally convince her, because it became a very quiet ride. Only time she would speak to me is, "Gary, you should stop and ask for some directions." I said, "Why would I stop and ask for directions? I'm a Green Beret. I've been through the jungles of Vietnam. We live in New York. Pennsylvania's south. We just head south. We'll get there." Made sense to me. Besides that, I still had this vision. I had this confidence. I trusted in my ability as a Green Beret to be able to make it to Altoona, PA. Well, as I said, it was a very quiet ride for the most part. But as it would happen, as we kept going south and got on freeways and things, I did see a sign that said Altoona, PA. Well, I kind of looked over at her, smiled. She didn't respond, though. And I didn't really want to rub it in, like, "I told you I'd get you here. I told you I'd get you here." She still was very, very quiet. Finally, she said, "What about the Marriott Hotel, Gary?" I mean, "What do you mean, the Marriott?" "That's where we're going to stay." "Oh, well, how big can Altoona, PA be? I'm sure we'll find the Marriott." And she said, "You should stop and ask for some directions. Please ask for directions." And I said, "Trust me, the vision, I've got you to Altoona, I'll get you to the Marriott." Any of you guys identifying with any of this stuff? Yeah. Well, as it would have it, as we were going into Altoona and we got ready to make the exit, off in the distance there was a Marriott hotel sign. I said, See? No, I didn't really say that, but that's what I wanted to do. "Trust me. You didn't trust me? I can do it. I can do it." Well, the further we got off the exit, the further the sign became, So finally, it was just like a little speck in the distance. But using my Green Beret training, I oriented myself north-south and started making turns. She said, "You really should stop and ask for some directions." I said, "No, not going to happen. It would be a blow to who I am. It would be a blow to my ego." Well, after going the wrong way on a one-way street, I finally said, maybe I should stop and get some directions, because it had been a while, and we were getting really tired. So I stopped at a gas station, and I said to the guy, "See that sign?" And he said, "Yep." I said, "That's where I want to go. Can you get me there?" And it wasn't one of those things that, "Well, you can't get there from here." He told me how I could get there, making the right turns. And So using my new set of directions, I kind of sheepishly went along and followed the directions and made the right turns, and finally made it for the final turn, and I could see the sign down there at the end of the street. So I'm envisioning kind of like that commercial, falling in on the bed, and just relaxing, So we're pulling into the parking lot, and I got really, really quiet, as did Lolly. I pulled up to the sign, put it in park, and I was afraid to look at her because what I had just found was the Marriott sign. There was no hotel there at all. Eventually, we did get to the Marriott Hotel, but, I couldn't get her to buy into my vision. And I don't know what was, whether it's arrogance, whether it's pride. Maybe it's that sense that all of us have of, gee, I don't want to give up control, I don't want to be under the influence of somebody else. It's kind of like what that guy was saying in the poem. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I can do this my own. The problem, though, is that sometimes where you end up, after you follow your soul and your fate, it's not what you expected, And you find yourself saying, wow, how'd I get here? This wasn't my plan. This isn't what I thought was going to be happening. Well, there was a wise man, wiser than Mr. Henley, Solomon. He said in Proverbs 14, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end is death. You want to be master of your fate. You want to be the captain of your own soul. But there's a way that seems right. But be careful, the end is death. You see, I was the captain of my soul. I was the master of my fate. I thought I had a great plan, much like I had the plan to get to the Marriott Hotel. I had a plan all set for my life. I was going to become a Green Beret, quit college, joined the military, became a Green Beret. I knew I wanted to go to Vietnam. I knew I wanted to become a medic in the Green Berets. I knew that I wanted to help people there. I knew that I wanted to serve my country. And I made it. I was the captain of my soul. I was the master of my fate. I became a Green Beret on a A-team. We lived in the jungles of Vietnam. We lived with a group of people called mountain yards, which is French for mountain people. 2,300 mountain yards, and I was the medic for that group of people. Did everything for them, What a great responsibility. What a sense of accomplishment. I had achieved everything that was in my dreams. And not only that, but I found myself in Vietnam, which was a very beautiful place to be. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. I mean, people pay now $7,000 to go on vacations there. They paid me $300 a month to be there, I didn't have to spend $7,000. Aside from the snakes and the tigers and occasional firefights, it wasn't a bad place to be. I was really living my dream. I was living my fate. Being the captain of my soul, I had achieved what I was after. But there was a sign in that team house that said, to really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. That sign used to bother me because I thought I was really living. I thought this was great. This was my Shangri-La. I'm the medic responsible for all these people. How could life be any better? But it said, to really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. Well, on April 1st, I learned the truth of that saying. Our camp was surrounded by 10,000 of the enemy. For 30 days, they pounded our camp. We had hand-to-hand combat going on. We called in B-52 strikes. I was shot 3 times and ended up in a hospital bed in Vietnam a few days later, almost dying. People want to know, what happened to you, Gary? What happened in that battle? What's it like to be shot? What's it like to be fighting hand to hand? What's it like to have B-52 strikes called in right on your camp? What's it like to have gunships flying over and just shooting everything that moves? Well, I tell them, that battle, piece of cake. Piece of cake. That battle was nothing compared to the greatest battle that I ever fought. You see, the greatest battle that I fought in that hospital bed in Vietnam. See, I woke up, and I was awake for a little bit, but then I'd go unconscious again. And then I would wake up, and then I would go unconscious. See, the battle that I was fighting was trying to stay awake. Now, I had been unconscious before back in college a few times, but this was a little bit differently, I didn't want to be unconscious on this, and I was fighting like crazy to keep myself from going unconscious. Well, there's a verse in Ecclesiastes 8:8, that says, there is no man that has power over the Spirit, to retain the Spirit, to hold on to the Spirit. No man has that power to hold on to the Spirit. Neither has he power in the day of death. And there's no discharge in that war. I was fighting a battle in that war. I was fighting the final battle. I was fighting a battle with death. You see, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end is death. Being the master of my fate, the captain of my soul, I thought I was following a great, great road. I thought it was what was right for my life. But be careful, because the end is death. And I was engaged in a hand-to-hand combat battle with death. I remember thinking back about that sign that we saw in Vietnam. To really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning. To protect it will never know. As I was engaged in that hand-to-hand combat battle with death, I began to learn some truths. I began to learn some lessons. Life began to take on some meaning to me. And what I learned, one lesson I learned, and I just want to share two lessons with you. One lesson I learned is that in life, what happens in you is much more important than what happens to you. In life, what happens in you is much more important than what happens to you. People always want to know, Gary, what happened to you? Tell us about the battle. Tell us about the people that were there, that were trying to kill you. What's it like to have 10,000 people running at you, screaming at you, and shooting, knowing they want to kill you? Well, that's pretty scary. But you know what? What is worse is being face to face with death and knowing you have no power over death. I learned that what happens in you is more important than what happens to you. And what was happening in me on that hospital bed? What was happening in me was that I brought all the weapons that I had used in going through training. I brought my resourcefulness. I brought my personal strength. I brought my determination. I brought my perseverance. I brought all those weapons to do battle. But what was happening in me is that every single one of those weapons, death just went, choo, choo, choo. Death laughed at me as I came to battle him with my personal strength, with my willpower, with who I was. What was happening in me? What was happening in me was that all that I had believed in, all that I had trusted, all that had brought me success up to this point in my life was being beaten by death. What was happening in me was that all that was me, all of who I was dying. What was happening in me? I was beginning to lose confidence in myself. I was beginning to lose confidence in who I was. Who I was Didn't matter when it came to death. Green Beret, you're dead. You're dying. I was losing confidence in my ability to handle life. I was losing confidence in my ability to handle death. I was losing confidence in self. I was losing confidence in being the captain of my soul. What happens in you is more important than what happens to you. What was happening in me in that battle, that hand-to-hand battle with death, was that self was dying. I began to learn that I could not trust in self anymore. I began to learn that I needed something outside of who I was to handle death. I learned that I needed something greater than me, greater than the pain that I was feeling, greater than the fear that was overwhelming me. I needed something greater than the death that I was battling with. I learned the truth that I needed something greater than all that I was, all that I had. I needed something outside of myself. That's what was happening in me. I lost confidence in self. People often ask, what's it like to be in a B-52 strike? Well, it's scary. But you know what the worst sounds of battle are? The worst sounds of battle that I ever heard were in that hospital ward. When I'd look over and I would watch a man breathing his last breaths. There's a certain sound that they make when they no longer can fight and they take that last breath and they die. And then they surrender and they put the white sheet over their head. I fought that battle so many times. I felt like I was taking that last breath, and it scared me. I was nothing anymore. Self was totally gone. Then one time a chaplain came by. He said, when I was awake, he said, "Son, I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you're awake." I remember saying, "Sir, I'm glad to be awake. It's been pretty scary, sir." And he said, "I've been by your bed and I've been praying for you. Would you like to pray with me?" I said, "Sir, I don't know how to pray. I don't even know who to pray to." And he said, "That's okay, son. God knows how to listen." And I remember uttering this very simple prayer. The prayer from damaged goods. The shell of a person lying on that bed. Nothing left. Nothing that I could believe in. Nothing that I could trust in, because everything had died. And I was next. I had nowhere else to turn. I was damaged. But he said, God knows how to listen. So I just said, "God, if you're real, I need you." I don't know if that prayer is written down in a prayer book somewhere or where. It's written down in my book, though, I'll tell you. You want a powerful prayer? God, if you're real. I've prayed that prayer a lot of other times since then, because there's times when I get in so many battles that I just get this fog of battle going and I can't see anything. I said, "God, you've been there before. Are you real? I need you." And he's there every day, just like he was that day. If you're real, God, I need you. Something happened at that moment. Now, I wasn't healed. I mean, I didn't jump up and start pulling all the tubes that were in me out. I didn't run around and start laying hands on everybody else that was shot and stuff. No, that's not what happened. But something happened here. Something happened here. Something touched me that brought a calmness to the chaos that I was living at that time. There was something that touched me that I knew was greater than my fear, that was greater than the pain, that was greater than the death that I was battling. I knew that there was something not only greater but more real than the death that I was facing. What was happening in me? Because that's what's important. I was becoming introduced to the reality, to the truth that God is real and He's powerful. But most importantly, at that particular moment, God knew where I was. And He was able to reach out and touch me and calm that storm that was going on in my life. And I felt a tremendous love at that moment. That knowledge that God was real changed my life. But you see, that's not the end of my story, because knowing that God is real is not knowing God. I knew God was real. So I began a search to find that God that I knew was real. 2 years later, I was with a friend of mine in New England, Massachusetts, who I valued his friendship. He was a great, great friend. He helped me deal with a lot of the pain and the hurt that I was experiencing from Vietnam. He said, "Gary, do you value our friendship?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Do me a favor then, will you? Here's a book. Read it." And he handed me the New Testament. And so I started reading Matthew, Mark. I got through Mark and I said, "What kind of book is this? It's the same story." You know? And he said, "Just keep reading, just keep reading." I read through Luke. I read through the Gospel of John. By the time I got to John 14, it starts out, "Let not your heart be troubled, Gary." I was shocked to see my name there, you know. I said, "Whoa, this is a pretty good book." "Let not your heart be troubled, Gary. You believe in God, don't you?" "Yes, I do. I met Him in a hospital bed in Vietnam." "Then believe also in me. I am the way, the truth, and the life, Gary. No man comes to the Father but by me." Then John 15, verse 9, he says, "As the Father has loved me, Gary, so have I loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." And in the 15th verse, he said, "Gary, you are my friend. And not only that, Gary, but I've got a plan for you," as he said in John 15, 16. "I've got a plan for you. I've ordained you. I've touched you. I've got something special and unique that I want you to do for me, Gary." Well, when I finished reading the 14th and the 15th chapter of John, it was at that point I said, "This is it. This is the God that I met in Vietnam." So on July 2nd, 1972, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I knelt down in a camper and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. That's still not the end of the story, though. You see, because like many who returned from war, I came back knowing that I was different. I came back knowing that I was changed, that things were different, that I was different. I had things that still bothered me. I still had problems being around people. So I left and I sought the solitude and the safety of a cave up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Lived in a cave for 2 years with my Bible. I said, I felt forgiveness from God, but I knew that I needed to be changed still. I knew that there were still things that I needed to work on. So 1 year later, after I accepted Christ, it was September of 1973. I remember praying, saying, "Lord, in that hospital bed, you touched me. Lord, in that camper, you gave me eternal life. And now I, Lord, realized that you have a plan for me. I don't want to be the captain of my soul. I don't want to be the master of my fate, Lord. Whatever you want, Lord, whatever you have for my life, that's what I want. I want only what you want for my life. September 73, I prayed that prayer. 2 weeks later, I was told I was being awarded the Medal of Honor. 2 weeks after I said, Lord, all that I am, all that I hope to be, I place it in your hands. I want what you want. And he gave me the Medal of Honor. And he told me, he said, Gary, here's my plan. I want you to come out of the cave, and I want you to go out and I want you to tell your story. But not your story about what you did, Gary. I want you to tell my story about what I did for you. I'm giving you this Medal of Honor. But Gary, I want you to remember Jeremiah 9, verses 23 through 24. Let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, or the mighty man in his might, Gary. Let not the rich man glory in his riches. But if you're going to glory in anything, Gary, if you're going to honor anything, be honored and glory in the fact that you know me, that I'm your friend. And I want you to wear that medal, Gary, not for your honor, but for my honor. So for over 40 years, I've been wearing this Medal of Honor for his honor. For over 40 years, I've been telling his story because my story has become his story. For over 40 years, he's been my guide when I couldn't see through that fog of battle. He's been my hope when I thought that all was lost. For over 40 years, he's been my strength when I wanted to give up. For over 40 years, he's been my friend when I thought that I was all alone. And for over 40 years, he's been my vision. To really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. I almost died, but in dying, I gained eternal life. Life has a meaning to me now because of that near-death experience and because of the fact that Christ now lives in my heart. He has healed the guilt, the anger, the pain. He has made me a new creation. But I have learned something else too. Life has a meaning that the protected will never know. And what I have learned is that what happens in you is more important than what happens to you. I've learned that in life we are all going to face tremendous challenges, hurts, heartaches. We're going to be tested. Things we believe in, things that we trust in are going to be tested. I have learned that I needed something outside of myself. I needed someone out of myself. I learned that I am not number one. I have learned that I am not captain of my soul. But more importantly, I've also learned that in life there's a big difference between success in life and significance in life. I've learned that no matter what success you achieve, no matter what accomplishments, no matter what riches, prestige, no matter what kind of accolades you can heap upon yourself through your own achievements, no matter what success you achieve, you will never achieve significance in life apart from Jesus. You will never achieve any significance in your life, regardless of the success, until you can become part of the plan that Jesus has for you, that unique plan that he has that only you can fulfill. And he's got one for you. And what happens in you is more important than what happens to you, because what happens in you is he wants you to realize that he wants to be the center of your life. He wants you to realize he wants to be the captain of your soul. He wants you to have a life of significance. He wants you to be part of his plan and to realize that every day he will walk with you, leading you, helping you to accomplish every dream that he has. He wants to be the captain of your soul. Living a life of significance is allowing him to change your story into his story and living his story for his honor. I thought about what's the difference between success and significance in life. The difference between success and significance is the difference between ending up at the Marriott sign and ending up at the Marriott hotel. You want to sleep at a sign? Success or significance. It's my prayer that you will choose significance and let Christ become a part of your life. My name is Gary Beikirch, and I am second. Thank you.